So the first thing I'm going to touch on here is monitoring consumption and demand. So during my time as an auditor, I saw companies of many different sizes really struggling to track software downloads throughout their environments. This seems to be a common problem for companies deploying Quest products specifically. And really, this can have adverse impacts on managing nearly any product. But for the purpose of our discussion today, I'm going to use Quest's Toad product as an example. Uh, when Quest issues your company with a Toad license key, that key can be installed at your discretion an unlimited number of times, even though likely you have not purchased an unlimited number of licenses. All too often, we'll see that the license key information is uploaded onto a shared drive somewhere and then left for anyone who needs it to download. Before you know it, the key that you purchased for a total of 60 seats has been deployed over 200 times, and getting that situation under control can obviously become an IT nightmare. This is really a common error that can easily be avoided by just centrally managing the distribution of your license key information. In large organizations, while we understand that this might be difficult, it's really a small step that can be taken to avoid snowballing into a much larger compliance problem. If you're struggling with license key monitoring, it's likely a symptom of a larger control issue. As we heard from Dean earlier, M&A can also have a massive set of consequences here if software purchases and product deployments aren't properly tracked, documented, and deployed. It's really a key area where integration and consolidation need to be a focus. This is a common issue and really a place where things can quite rapidly fall out of control if they aren't closely monitored. All in all, this brings us to a broader discussion of download policy and governing your installs. Hopefully, most of your companies have an established e-policy, but even with this type of policy in place, it's not uncommon for companies to have an open download policy, which allows users to download software as they please. With all policies, really the key is to define what's acceptable. So, for instance, having authorized lists in place, and then to have processes in place to really monitor and police the environment. I guess a key takeaway here is that you really need to educate your users and then work with them to understand and ultimately support their needs. Um, However, when you're tracking and monitoring user downloads and installations, you have to have protocols in place to immediately take steps if any blacklisted titles are found. When looking at your Quest software, it's key to ask yourself if you are able to track which products are in use and who has downloaded them. If you are able to manage and monitor which products are being downloaded, you're going to be able to strategically purchase and build your software portfolio around the products that most benefit your organization. This really all ties back into document control, especially in regard to decentralized environments. Contracts and entitlement data don't always go into a central repository, and it can be difficult to piece together the full picture. If you don't know what you own, how are you going to be able to track consumption and true demand of those licenses? Understanding your entitlement limitations and your contractual obligations is really an absolute necessity when working to accurately interpret and plan for the needs of your users and for your environment as a whole. Another consideration here, would your organizations be able to command better discounts, pricing, and maybe even contractual terms if a strategic approach was taken to procurement rather than a piecemeal approach? That's just some food for thought there. In regards to contractual obligations with Quest, a topic worthy for discussion as it relates to what we've covered so far today is trial and freeware installations. When most people see the words trial and freeware, they assume that this is going to be an unlimited, cost-free, and typically some kind of evaluation software. Trial and freeware installs, while technically free, there are use rights that are going to be governed in your contracts with Quest. Without getting too deep into the technical details here, the high-level summary of this is that Quest's language allows for trials on a 1 per any release of software basis, and then freeware is allowed on a 5 per year basis, and technically only allowed to be used for 90 days from the date of download. Another key area to mention is that both of these instances are required to be installed in only non-production environments. They cannot be supporting your production environment in any way. Some older audit terms that Quest has actually allow Quest to launch an audit if they can identify a concern or risk of non-compliance. So one of these things that they can use as a trigger are trial and freeware downloads. And we have seen Quest use this approach as a jumping point to trigger an audit. Continuing on here, additionally, in the settlement phase of a review, trial and freeware issues can basically be used by Quest as a leveraging tool. You don't want to let over deployment of trial and freeware software that realistically you likely don't even need and are probably not using to become a pawn for Quest's compliance team to use against you in a settlement. While trial and freeware installs aren't hard to manage if you have the right processes and protocols in place, it can be difficult in an organization that just has problems overall with bad user. Again, this loops back in with Dean's earlier points regarding contractual framework. The only way to really alleviate these issues is to understand the terms of your contracts and therefore put the appropriate controls and monitoring into place. If you're considering this a weak point for your organization, we're happy to aid you in the development of these processes because we understand how important they truly are.